Resuming debate, the honourable member for Fundy Royal.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. It's an honour to speak today, and I'll be splitting my time with the member from Calgary Forest Lawn. Madam Speaker, the motion we're debating today says that given the government has announced a temporary 3-year pause to the federal carbon tax on home heating oil, the House call on the government to extend that pause to all forms of home heating. What could be more fair, Madam Speaker? This is a reasonable, common sense, and fair-minded motion that addresses the concerns that we're all hearing from our constituents as the cost of living continues to rise under this government. Given that the government has announced a temporary 3-year pause to the federal carbon tax on home heating oil, the House call on the government to extend that pause to all forms of home heating. What this motion is asking for, Madam Speaker, is simply fairness for all Canadians, regardless of their region, regardless of the way they choose to heat their home. Madam Speaker, we all of us in this House, all Canadians, especially all Atlantic Canadians, are acutely aware of what happened with this Prime Minister. He's been saying that he's going to bring in this carbon tax. He brought in a carbon tax that hurts working people. It hurts single mothers. It hurts families that are just trying to make ends meet. It hurts the person that's getting up early in the morning, getting in their vehicle, driving to work. It hurts the parent that's trying to take their kid to a hockey game. It hurts the family that's trying to put food on the table. It hurts the senior citizen who on a fixed income is trying to heat their home. We all know, we've all heard from our constituents the damage that's being done by the carbon tax. And that is why it was so crass when our leader, when the Conservative leader was about to hold a rally in Atlantic Canada, in the province of Nova Scotia, an Axe the Tax rally, Mr. Speaker, a rally where I've been to one of these rallies before where many people, Madam Speaker, are very concerned about the carbon tax, and they're very enthusiastic about our party's plan to axe the carbon tax, to make life more affordable, to give Canadians back a little bit of that money that they work so hard to earn. Well, the Prime Minister has been steadfast. His Atlantic members of Parliament have been steadfast. They have voted in favor of the carbon tax every single time, Mr. Speaker. You know, it's funny. Atlantic Liberal MPs, when it was their constituents that were suffering, when it was their constituents that were having loss, they didn't stand up to the Prime Minister. When it was their constituents that were having to call them and say, and we know these calls are coming in, Mr. Speaker, I don't know how I'm going to pay the heating bill. I don't know how I'm going to put gas in the car. When they call your office and say, I have to choose today whether I'm going to buy groceries for my kids or whether I'm going to be able to heat my house. We know that is happening. It's happening in Atlantic Canada. It's happening throughout Canada, Mr. Speaker. How crass it was for the Liberal members of Parliament from Atlantic Canada and for the Prime Minister to finally, when the tables are turned and it's their job on the line, when the numbers aren't looking so good, when they realize, wait a minute, this could cost me something. Forget my constituents. This could cost me something. Now you've got their attention. And now, as I was saying, the very day our leader was going to be in Nova Scotia and went to Nova Scotia for an Axe the Tax rally, they announced this completely transparent proposal to freeze the carbon tax on home heating oil only. Well, in my province of New Brunswick, 90% of homes are not heated with home heating oil. This doesn't apply to those people. And we're hearing from other Liberal members from throughout the country that say, wait a minute, what about my constituents? What about me in the next election? What's going to happen to me? Every Atlantic Canadian knows that this Prime Minister and these Liberal members have voted to make their life tougher. Every one of us knows mortgage payments have gone up, that the cost of groceries have gone up, that the cost of fuel has gone up, that we're taxing people every step of the way. And we can see right through this panicked reaction. And if it wasn't so sad, it would be laughable, Mr. Speaker. In New Brunswick, this increase that they've given to rural areas. Well, let's talk about that. Rural area in New Brunswick, if you are a tenured professor or a provincial bureaucrat living in downtown city of Fredericton, our capital city in New Brunswick, you get the rural top-up. But if you live in my riding in the village of St. Martin's, population under 300, and you have a 100-kilometer round-trip commute to work in St. John, a truly rural community, or in Elgin, New Brunswick, population under 200, with over a 100-kilometer commute to the city of Moncton for work, truly a rural community, you don't get the rural top-up. That's how twisted this Liberal proposal is and how little they understand the needs of New Brunswickers and the needs of rural Canadians. So as he watches his support drop to new lows, the Prime Minister is now trying to rebrand himself very transparently as a hero for Atlantic Canadians living in rural communities. Mr. Speaker, this is a frantic attempt to slow down the support for our Axing the Tax movement. That the Prime Minister announced a slight increase to the rural rebate, but is applying it to urban centres. That people living with the high cost of fuel, the high cost of groceries, the high cost of heating their home are getting no relief whatsoever. So, Mr. Speaker, that's why it's heartening to see from coast to coast to coast, different provinces standing up and saying, now's the time. Now's the time to axe the carbon tax. Now is the time to help people. Everyone recognizes this. Everyone recognizes it, but the Prime Minister and his Liberal caucus. You know, how often have we all seen, and I know this drives Liberals crazy, but how often have we all seen the Prime Minister get into his motorcade and jet off to some other country to preach about his virtue?
So I hate to interrupt the honourable member from Fundy Royal in his middle of his speech. It is now time for us to move to declarations from members. The honourable member will have 2 minutes and 40 seconds left in his speech to continue at the next opportunity.